The quiet roll-up, how death became a business model. The first deals were quiet. A local funeral home changed hands, but the sign didn't. The family name stayed on the awning. The director shook your hand like always, and the casket room looked the same. Behind the scenes, the supplier changed, the bank covenants arrived, and the price list moved by inches. That's the roll-up playbook. By the trust that already exists, keep the brand, centralize the guts. Public companies tested it in the 1990s. Then private equity took notes. The model was simple: acquire mom-and-pop mortuaries at 7 to 9 times cash flow, layer on debt, standardize purchasing, push average revenue per service, and sell the larger chain at a higher multiple. The trick was never to look corporate. Keep the family name as a local trust facade. Put the call center across town. Consolidate caskets and urns in a shared warehouse. Renegotiate chemicals and paper goods. Share vehicles. Trim headcount just enough that no one notices on a Tuesday afternoon. In some regions, a quarter of mortuaries now sit under corporate or PE ownership. Families don't see holding company logos. They hear, "We've served this town for 60 years." It's true. Only now the phone line forwards through a hub, and the budget that sets your service options is approved 3 states away. Meanwhile, something else was happening up the stack. Cremation chains grew as the cremation rate crossed 50% national. Cemetery groups bundled land, vaults, and opening and closing fees. Hospice agencies, once mostly nonprofit, tilted for profit, with an expanding share owned by private equity and publicly traded companies. Transport services, mortuary removal teams, grief platforms, all found owners who liked recurring volume and predictable demand. Every link between the hospital bed and the graveside could be coordinated. Every handoff could be optimized for margin. What nobody knew at the time, because there wasn't a headline for it, was how the small frictions became profit centers. Pre-need contracts, sold at church seminars and kitchen tables, locked in future business. Merchandising reframed decisions into tiers: basic, heritage, dignity. Financing add-ons offered peace of mind for a monthly fee. And staffing cuts, measured in quarters of a full-time equivalent, squeezed schedules until one director handled what used to be 2 people's load. Here's where it gets real at the counter. A director used to say no to a charge that felt wrong. Under a leveraged owner, that discretion narrows. The basic service fee sits like a floor. Embalming slides from optional to recommended to standard in this package. Facilities and vehicles split into line items. A live stream fee appears because the chain signed a contract with a vendor. When a family pushes back, the director points to policy. The local trust facade protects the brand while the policies push the bill. Get this, they actually thought cremation would collapse pricing power. It did for a while, but chains learned to pivot. Low advertised prices got people in. Then the upsells started. Rushed transport, upgraded urns, memorial pages, witness cremation fees. Vertical control. Own the crematory, the online arrangement portal, the call center, meant volume without weathering. A single manager could route calls from 3 counties to whichever facility had capacity, and no one outside the system could price map it in real time. To understand why this mattered for your family's balance sheet, we need to sit in the deal room. Leverage amplifies returns when you can raise price or volume without losing customers. Death is the ultimate captive demand. When a loved one dies, decisions happen in 48 to 72 hours. Price shopping falls apart under grief and time pressure. That's not a character flaw. It's human. The roll-up counts on it. A 1% quarterly increase across thousands of services flows straight into interest coverage and bonus pools. Meanwhile, there's a map on a wall at headquarters. Pins for every acquired home, icons for cemeteries, flags for hospice partners. The goal isn't just size, it's the funnel. Hospital social workers need a number. Hospice nurses need reliable transport at 2 a.m. If your chain solves those frictions, your brand becomes the default recommendation. You don't need kickbacks to benefit from soft steering. You just need to be the name on the laminated sheet. One microstory sticks. A second-generation director sells to a partner who shares our values. The press release promises investment. 6 months later, he's reporting to a regional manager who asks about his average revenue per case and why embalming penetration dropped 3 points. He stops offering a cheaper casket unless asked. He hates it. He also has a mortgage and a non-compete. This was the moment everything changed. The business model shifted from service first to metric first. Not because owners are cartoon villains, but because debt doesn't care about sentiment. Covenants ask whether EBITDA grew. The spreadsheet decides whether a van gets replaced or a night shift goes unfilled. Families feel it as nickel-and-diming. Staff feel it as burnout. Owners feel it as a quarterly call. While that was happening in New York, a nonprofit hospice 2 states overgot an acquisition offer. New capital promised technology upgrades and growth. After the deal, caregiver reported satisfaction dipped, and per-patient revenue rose. That's not an accusation against every buyer. It's a reminder that incentives shape outcomes. When the same investors own parts of the funnel, pricing power compounds. The opening you saw, the signed standard form, the unexplained fees, starts here. Keep the name. Centralize control. Leverage the moments when families can't negotiate. We haven't even touched probate advances or the 40-year-old FTC funeral rule. We will. First, we need to talk about how grief itself becomes pricing power. Grief as pricing power, the behavioral arbitrage. Decisions come like a wave. A call from the hospital. A meeting at the home. A list of choices you've never seen before. Meanwhile, the clock is running. Religious timelines, family travel, refrigeration, cemetery slots. 48 to 72 hours is the window most families have to pick a path, sign contracts, and authorize charges. In that window, price shopping isn't just hard, it feels disloyal. That's the seam the roll-up exploits, not with cartoonish hard sells, but with structure. Here's how the psychology turns into money. First, anchoring. You sit down and see 3 packages on a single sheet: basic, heritage, dignity, laid out left to right with the middle boxed, and most selected in bold. Basic doesn't include viewing. Heritage adds embalming and upgraded facilities. Dignity folds in limo, video tribute, printed programs, and a mid-tier casket. The director doesn't push. They walk you through the middle column and pause. You nod because this is your mother. Anchoring plus a most popular cue drifts you off the low end without anyone saying the word upsell. Second, urgency. We can reserve the chapel at 3 p.m. Friday if we finalize today. The cemetery has 2 adjacent plots, but they can't hold them without a deposit. A countdown clock disguised as scheduling. None of it is necessarily false. It's just arranged so that waiting feels risky and decide now feels like care. You default to yes. Each yes is a margin nudge, coordinating fee, rush certificate processing, after-hours removal. Third, information asymmetry. There's a federally required itemized price list, but not every chain has to post it online yet. In the arrangement room, the binder is thick. Some line items are required, others recommended, others customary. Buried in the back is a low-cost casket you have to ask for by SKU. The livestream vendor is a corporate partner. The fee is fixed. You could call 2 other homes for quotes, but your aunt is crying and your brother flies out tomorrow. Meanwhile, something else is happening in your head. Loss aversion tilts you toward avoiding regret. If there's a chance you'll wish you did more, you lean into extras, because the pain of not enough feels bigger than the cost today. Dignity becomes what she deserved. The director isn't a villain. They're reading a checklist the chain's revenue team refined in a conference room. Each checkbox moves average revenue per service. What nobody tells you up front is how optional becomes sticky. Embalming isn't legally required in most cases, but in a tiered package it's baked in. Vaults aren't always mandatory, but the cemetery's rules say container. And the sheet shows 3 levels: liner, standard vault, premium sealed vault. Standard doesn't sound like cutting corners. It sounds like doing it right. Anchors and adjectives do the quiet work. Here's a micro-story. A widow in her 50s sits across from a director she's known for years. The home changed hands, the name didn't. He guides her through choices, and she says yes to a memorial video, streaming for relatives overseas, and a protective casket vault. She authorizes the obituary on the home's portal. 6 weeks later, when the fog lifts, she notices the streaming cost 3 times what a local videographer would have charged. The vault wasn't necessary for that cemetery. The obituary host renews after a year. None of it was fraud. It was design. Chains sharpen the design with small frictions. Death certificates routed through a preferred courier at a convenience fee. Facility usage splits into visitation room and chapel, even if it's the same space with lights changed. Vehicles priced separately: removal van, hearse, family car. Obituary posting is free. but featured placement on partnered sites carries a charge. Each item on its own looks modest. Together, under time pressure, they float the bill without a headline price hike. The cremation pivot runs the same play. Ads promise $895 direct cremation. The call center collects payment and schedules pickup. Then the layers appear. Oversized remains handling, expedited return, private witness fee, certified mail, upgraded urn, scattering service, online memorial subscription. If the chain owns the crematory and the site, it controls timing, access, and add-ons. You can't force a competing bid when the decedent is already in their care. There's also the limited time cemetery plot script. This row is almost sold. If you want to keep the family together, we need to commit. Land is finite, which makes the pitch plausible. In denser markets, scarcity is real. In others, scarcity is manufactured by releasing inventory in phases. Families don't know the difference. They accept the frame. Behavioral arbitrage thrives on politeness norms. Who haggles over a hearse? Who asks for a no-frills casket by model number? Chains count on that discomfort. They train staff to avoid trigger words and offer value. They set default choices that preserve margin. They tuck the printable price list behind a QR code. If you ask, you'll get it. Most don't ask. This was the moment everything changed at the table. Grief became the protection. The brand wore a local face. The script came from far away. Not every home plays it hard. Many directors still bend fees and fight for families. But under leverage, the machine prefers the median buyer who says yes. And in those 72 hours, almost everyone is a median buyer. Now layer in the other gatekeepers, hospice and hospitals. Where you start, the journey shapes where you end. The end-of-life funnel, hospice, hospitals, and referrals. While the family is drowning in choices, upstream professionals are trying to solve problems of their own. A hospital needs the bed. A hospice nurse needs a reliable 2 a.m. transfer. Social workers need a list that won't blow up their phones. That's where the funnel forms: preferred provider lists, partners, and soft steering that looks like help and acts like gravity. To understand why a single name keeps appearing, we need to go back a decade. Hospice used to be mostly nonprofit, mission-heavy, community-rooted. Then the ownership map shifted. For-profit chains grew. Private equity and publicly traded companies expanded their footprints. Studies started to flag something families could feel but couldn't measure. Agencies spending less on direct patient care and staffing while per-patient billing to Medicare ticked higher. Quality scores based on caregiver reports slipped at PE and public-owned agencies compared with nonprofits. That's not universal, but the pattern raised a question. What happens when the last days of life sit inside a growth engine? Here's how the incentives meet the bedside. Hospice is paid a per diem by Medicare. The money stops if a patient is hospitalized. Longer lengths of stay within certain diagnoses can improve margins. Add staffing pressures, and you get a fragile balance. Enough visits to pass audits and keep families satisfied, not so many that costs rise. Meanwhile, the discharge planner at the hospital is juggling scarce beds. They need a trusted hospice that can accept today. If that hospice uses a preferred mortuary and a transport company owned by the same investors, friction drops. No one has to say the word referral fee. The laminated sheet does the work. Unknown to families, some relationships sit behind confidentiality clauses and preferred partner MOUs. A hospice might keep a short list of mortuaries they recommend because of reliability. That could be true. It could also be path-dependent. The chain with the 24/7 call center answers every time, so the nurse saves their number. Over months, that number becomes the default. The effect is the same as a paid funnel: volume concentrates. Here's a micro moment. A daughter signs hospice papers for her father on a Tuesday. He wants to die at home. The nurse explains comfort meds, equipment delivery, and what to do when death occurs. "Call us first," she says. "We'll take care of everything." When the moment comes at 1:12 a.m., the on-call nurse arranges removal through a contracted mortuary partner. By sunrise, the body is in the chain's care, and the family's options have narrowed to what that chain offers at the arrangement meeting. While that was happening in New York, across town a hospital's case management team updated their discharge protocol. Bed availability is brutal. They load a resources page with 3 hospice agencies and 2 mortuaries that never miss pickups. There's no kickback. There is speed. Speed feels like kindness. Kindness builds trust. Trust builds habit. Habit builds market share. Now map the revenue streams. Hospice is Medicare funded, with audits and reporting. The mortuary and cemetery are private pay. When the same investors sit on both sides of that handoff, pricing power compounds. A family guided smoothly through hospice may never shop the funeral. They'll sign at the first sit-down because it feels like continuity of care. That's the quiet conversion point, where publicly funded care meets a private invoice. What nobody knew at the time was how much leverage lived in transport. Mortuary removal at odd hours is hard work. Independent operators struggle to staff nights. Chains centralize fleets, pay stipends, and guarantee response times. That wins referrals. It also allows bundling. Removal fees, storage, refrigeration, and sanitary care line items come standard. Once the decedent is in their cooler, moving to a competitor means fees, forms, and another drive families rarely request. There's also the question of discharge urgency. Hospitals under pressure sometimes frame choices as now or never. We need to free the bed tonight. This hospice can accept. Families read that as a mandate. They're not told about the full list of agencies, or they're handed a list without context and a gentle nudge to the familiar names. In theory, patients choose. In practice, stress picks the path. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Some hospices run community bereavement groups and then offer planning assistance sessions that segue into pre-need sales pitches by partners. It's legal with disclosures. It blurs lines families assume are bright. A widow joins a grief circle and leaves with a brochure for a cemetery package. She trusts the room. The room is sponsored. Meanwhile, regulators can see parts of this, but not the whole. Medicare audits hospice documentation. State funeral boards look at price disclosures. No one agency watches how a preferred provider web quietly steers private dollars. Conflicts aren't always illegal. They are powerful. This was the moment everything changed for one social worker we interviewed. After a chain bought 2 of the 3 reliable mortuaries in her county, weekend coverage got smoother. But she realized every after-hours death in her unit was flowing into the same corporate intake. She started handing out a fuller list and telling families, "You can call any of these." Some still chose the chain. Others didn't. The difference was a sentence and a pause. Families can ask, "Who else is on the list?" They can say, "We'll make our own calls." They can decouple hospice's medical care from funeral providers. But the default is powerful, and in crisis, defaults win. Which is why the next lever in the funnel, pre-need contracts sold as relief.